Hello everyone. I'm here today to talk about a simple project that I built recently, and that is a simple coat rack. So this was intended to go in the front hall of our home and to obviously hang things like coats and hats and whatever we saw fit. So let's dive into how I built this. So in my case, I went to Home Depot when I picked up a 6-foot board of quote unquote Knotty Pine. And the goal here was to take my miter saw and just clean up the edges and ultimately cut that 6-foot board down into two sections of 3-foot boards. And that would comprise the two pieces of the coat rack. So here I'm just putting the two pieces together and seeing how they come together and determining which board I would want to be the flush portion against the wall versus the top of the coat rack. And my choice of joinery for those two pieces was using dowels. So at this time I didn't have anything like a drill press, so here I was just marking accurate measurements of where I wanted the dowels to go, and in my case I used 4. So the goal here was to transfer those accurate measurements from one board to the other, and then the dowel marks would line up. So this is admittedly very crude, but I used a 90-degree angle on a scrap piece of wood to drill out the holes. And what I did was, on my drill bit, I used a piece of masking tape to indicate the halfway point of the actual dowel pin, and then I just drilled down until I hit the tape mark. So I ended up with dowel holes on the one board, and then here I'm just transferring those measurements to the other board so they would line up. So I just was trying to be very accurate here. And then I ended up just using my drill and sort of freehanding the holes on the top board, and you can see the tape there on the drill bit. So I was somewhat lucky. The two pieces came together very nicely. So I got the dowels in, and then just did a dry fit. And the two pieces came together nicely, and then I applied some clamps just to see how well the two pieces clamped together, and if there were any gaps or anything like that. So the two pieces came together quite nicely. So I'm not quite too sure what I was doing there, but it came time to glue up the two pieces. So just putting some wood glue down into the dowel holes, putting the dowels in, and then gluing up the actual face of the board where the two pieces come together, and then finding the best way of clamping these together, wiping up any squeeze out. So here is just an example of the corner pieces that I was going to make for the coat rack, and I just used a mixing bowl from the kitchen to draw out a circle, and then a jigsaw to cut out the corner pieces. So my goal here was to also use dowels on these corner pieces. So that ended up being very tricky. What I wanted to avoid was drilling these corner pieces into the coat rack and using screws to connect them. I didn't want any screws to show whatsoever, so I chose to use dowels on these, and it was admittedly very tricky. Essentially, it was the same process that I did with the actual the two pieces of the coat rack, the Knotty Pine. So just getting some accurate measurements for the dowel holes, and transferring those over onto the two pieces. So here I'm just doing some sanding, getting things prepped to add those corner pieces, and it's me working late into the night or late into the evening. I think I was obsessed at this point. So here it comes time to drill those dowel holes, and again I'm just using my drill. Looking back on this, it's very crude, and I'm lucky that these went together okay. But I guess I just took my time and tried to measure as accurately as I can, and it ended up working out okay. So all is well that ends well, but that was tricky. So a really difficult thing was figuring out how to clamp these, to glue it up and clamp it down. So I ended up using an offcut from when I cut out those corner pieces, and as you can see right there, I put that into the corner piece to form a proper square, which would allow me to get a clamp on there, both some force into the upper part of the shelf and some downward force into the face plate part of the coat rack. So that went on there nicely, and then I was just cleaning up all the glue. In retrospect, I should have used some masking tape to stop some of the squeeze out from getting onto the coat rack, but I mean, the more you do this, the more you learn. But here I am doing the other corner piece, and then as you can see there, just drilling out the holes. And there's a great example of that offcut that I put back into the shelf to form that square there, so I could get some good pressure. I ended up using another little scrap piece of wood from what it looks like there. Yeah, that was tricky. Looking back on it, that was not easy. So just using some sandpaper here to get things nice and clean. Again, this was a big problem with the squeeze out. This is where if you put some masking tape down on the edges before you glue things up, you can catch a lot of that glue squeeze out and save yourself a lot of time. So once that was all clean, what I did was I moved over to using a gel stain, and here is the final result. So it ended up turning out very well. There are some things on this that I'm not happy with, but it's a very functional shelf, and it's working well for us. What we did was attach it to the wall using some flush mount brackets, and there's a lot of options out there for you. I just went to the store and chose the best option that seemed to work for me. It's just a flush mount bracket, and here it is. So this is the coat rack, and we've got some coats and some hats and just some simple bins up top for hats and mitts and things like that. So overall, it worked very well. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.